Hello everyone, this is Sage. Welcome to the Executive Corner Expert Talks by 𝐶𝐞 TV. Today's special guest is Mr. Simon Wetherell, the CEO of Viridi Projects. And energy efficiency is more than just a buzzword in these times. It is the key in many examples to the future of civilizations. And today's expert will share insights on helming the ship for Viridi, an energy service company, or ESCO, project funding platform, whose services allow ESCOs, governments, multilateral development banks and companies to fund green projects and ultimately energy efficiency. So we bring you the industry leaders, successful business owners, all under the one roof to help you discover the insights of the stock markets. And today we've been very lucky to share some space with Mr. Simon Wetherell, CEO of Viridi Projects. Welcome to the show, Simon.
Thank you, Sage. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to meet you too. And with your extensive experience working in the Australian High and Federal Courts as a legal practitioner, we're keen to share your insights. So, Simon, 40% of the United Nations emissions reduction targets can be met through energy efficiency, and yet the energy efficiency sector is only now starting to blossom. Why do you think this is so?
Well, Sage, I think there's a number of reasons for it. First of all, when you talk about doing energy efficiency projects, they're not sexy projects for a visual rollout of press and everything else. They're not like a big wind farm or a huge big acres of space of solar technology. It's hidden, and so that makes it a little bit harder to show. Also, many people think that just being efficient is a matter of switching to your renewables. And unfortunately, that's not the case. It's just completely wasted energy, whether it's renewable or not. And in the past, historically, it's been very hard to measure. So, and to actively measure and verify it, people haven't been really sure which path to go down. And this has meant that, as it's hard to quantify. And at government level, it's much easier to say they just spent $100 million on a renewable project than talking about energy efficiency that, as said, you can't really show a pile of carbon emissions.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you so much for sharing your insights there. It's a very interesting topic to talk about at the moment. We've seen a lot of new gas projects being developed in Australia recently, and the ESG sector is also pulsing in corporations, and it's come so much in the forefront of lobbyists and these renewable and materials sector companies that it's actually delaying some projects as well. Do you think that's why people are sometimes hesitant to get involved in the renewable sector investment-wise?
I think part of it is as said before, it's hard to measure and verify if you don't know what you're doing or you're new to the sector. So historically, banks have been, I guess, very hesitant, and traditional lenders have been very hesitant to get into this space because they're not really aware how to accurately measure the risk. Not a lot of historical data there. So if somebody comes and says, look, we're going to do a wind farm, we're going to do a solar farm, then it's something, there's tangibles that they can, more readily accept. Whereas when you start talking about energy efficiency projects, things, it is harder to get them on board to start with. So that's definitely one of the things, but there's a lot of advantages of having investment into these areas. They are instantly 100% green, and it's very easy, as we can prove that. And I think one of the things now, the stock exchanges and certainly in London, Australia, they're now very of CSR responsibilities to be a good environmental, I guess, participant. And so we're looking now where, and you've got in the press and you've got activists and everything else that are promoting this and making it a very real topic and present now. So because of that, we're seeing people be very aware of it because it's something that they can't just say that they're trying to be green. They now actually have to prove it.
Exactly. Thank you so much for sharing your insights there. And back to the mainline discussion, the federal government's been putting a lot of funding allocation, I should more correctly say, into the renewable sector from their recent budget announcement earlier this year. In your expert opinion, what are the benefits people can gain from investing into the green projects? You touched on it a little bit just then. Would you mind expanding on that?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously there are significant benefits to the environment and the planet, but having green projects now, as said, I touched on it with the ASX, the LSX, they're now measuring this. It's something that it's expected of companies and to actually provide and do. There are targets that have come out of the recent G7 meeting. Australia got it along to that to, I guess, admonish them for their poor performance in the past and to get them to take it seriously. So now with these fundings and these projects, they can get into this. There's immediate benefits that will happen to the company. One of the things that we focus on is energy savings contracts. So often this will leave businesses in a position where they actually have improved cash flows and they have no capex expenditure. They're not out of pocket. And then on the plus side, as I said, with the government announcements, there are in certain areas tax breaks, tax incentives, and other tangible, benefits that they can receive as well, on top of the fact that they're actually doing the right thing.
Thank you so much for shedding a bit more light on that scenario. And on that note, most lenders lack understanding and expertise in this particular area, even though there is significant pressure on them to fund more green projects and reduce funding for the projects that do add to the carbon burning of carbon fossil fuels, should I say. And why, in your opinion, is this the case?
As I said, traditionally banks are used to, they have their set models, they do their risk analysis, and it's very simple for them and put into nice, neat little models. When you start trying to measure things that aren't standard or is not, we're talking about new technologies. Ironically, some of these measurement protocols have been around for 20 plus years, but it's not something that's been for the banks to get into, or there hasn't been a desire for them to get into. And for anybody to go, a startup to go to the bank to try and actually get funding off them, if there's anybody that's tried it will know, they want at least 3 years of history and everything else. So it makes it incredibly difficult for startups, which there are a lot of in this space. And as I said, the banks don't seem to want to be the first one that embraces this and goes through the door, although we are starting to see some movement, which is positive.
Well, it sounds like Viridi is really offering a platform there just to streamline that whole process between the banks and the lenders and the green conscious companies that are emerging and the startups that will hopefully be able to come up with better technologies so we can meet those targets to reduce greenhouse emissions and global warming ultimately. How do you envision Viridi projects being able to assist organisations to become more energy efficient and reduce their CO2 footprint, please?
Yeah, so one of the things, as I said, there's a gap between lenders and the understanding of technology and the people that are the ESCOs that are trying to promote it. What we do is see ourselves as bridging the gap between government and the ESCOs and ultimately the customers, the end user that's going to implement it in their factories and their processes to generate that carbon reduction. One of the things with energy efficiency as opposed to renewable energy is it's fairly instantaneous in that can reap immediate benefits. And when we're talking about some of the targets for 2030, 2050, these can be reached a lot quicker and a lot easier by using energy efficiency combined with renewable energies. So what we're trying to do is cover both of those areas, but help bridge the gap, make it a lot easier for lenders to understand the process. We're working with insurance companies to provide products that are going to benefit the risk analysis the banks do so that they'll be more comfortable lending. And then we do the front end funding for the end consumer when they want to purchase renewable energy or energy efficiency projects. So hopefully packaging all that together. We'd also like to, and we'll be lobbying the government in the future, especially Australia. There's such a horizon of talent and startups, as we mentioned, of companies that are working in this green energy space that we would like to not only help domestically, but then to help roll their products out internationally.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing your insights there. And in Australia, we're quite lucky as well. We've got a fairly clean climate and environment, and we've got lots of space to house these large-scale renewable energy projects. So it'll be interesting to see, and an exciting time to talk to you about how your company Viridi can help these projects to get off the ground. And I've noticed that the countries that have the environments that are quite heavily polluted or affected by smog, that they're working quite well towards achieving these targets of zero emissions by 2030 and 2050. And climate change is worsening by the day. So in your opinion, is a deteriorating condition of Earth's climate mainly because of human needs, or do you think it's lack of action?
I think it's a great question. And I think what we've seen recently with COVID, even my personal experiences of it, the change has done. When we had the first lockdown, there is absolutely no doubt that there were amazing benefits to the environment. You know, people in India were seeing the Himalayas for the first time from certain towns. You know, the bottom of the Venice Canal suddenly became visible again. Where I live locally, there suddenly you could see, I look offshore to islands, suddenly you could see the individual islands, everything, there was a lot more clarity, the water was beautiful, and you could see the reefs and the depth. So there is absolutely no doubt that what we are doing with man-made pollution is having a major impact. And I use the example of industrialisation. So when you looked at industrialisation first started, especially look in the UK, it led to factories producing sulphur and sulphur producing acid rain. Acid rain then led to stripping the minerals out of the crops that were being done. Now, it's taken decades to actually do the proper research to see how bad that is, and that's then impacted on the quality of food we eat and everything else. So it's had a huge impact. I guess the question is, do we really want to wait 20 or 30 years to really realise how badly we've messed up our environment by not taking simple actions today?
Thank you so much. Yes, that's answers resonating quite loudly with the Act Now. And thank you so much, Simon, for sharing your valuable insights. It's a very exciting space to watch, and we are keenly watching to see, because I don't think we have 20 years to wait to see if we can manage by the way we're going at the moment. So thank you again for your time today and the work you're doing. Thanks. And best of luck for your near-term goals.
Thanks, Sage. And I think if we don't do it now, then the next generation's going to lynch us.
Probably not wrong there. And viewers, thank you so much for joining us as well. If you've just joined the show, we had a very inspiring discussion with Mr. Simon Wetherell, the CEO of Viridi, and you can watch the full recorded interview later on today from 𝐾𝐿𝐼𝐴 Media's YouTube channel. And as we say, stay apprised and invest wise with 𝐾𝐿𝐼𝐴.